Your phone. Give it to me right now. I froze when Declan grabbed my wrist, his grip so tight I could feel my pulse hammering against his fingers. We had just left the charity gala where we played the perfect couple for every camera and curious eye, and now we stood alone in the parking lot under dim fluorescent lights, just the two of us. His dark green eyes held a fire I couldn't understand because this was all pretend, wasn't it? I was just his assistant for the past 2 years, handling paperwork, fetching coffee orders, essentially invisible in the corporate machinery of Hayes Industries. Then one random Tuesday afternoon, he called me into his office and dropped a bomb I never saw coming. He needed a favor, he said. His ex-fiancée Vanessa was making strategic moves with his rival company, and he wanted to make her jealous enough to back off. The solution? Plain, unremarkable Riley Chen, college dropout who saved bus fare to afford lunch. Declan, you're crossing the line. I tried pulling my hand free, but he stepped closer instead. His cologne hit me, something expensive with cedarwood and a darker note I couldn't identify, and it messed with my ability to think straight. Crossing what line? He let out this strange laugh that didn't match his usual controlled demeanor. I wish there was still a line to cross, Riley. My heart skipped several beats. Wait, did he just say what I thought he said? No, I was reading too much into things. This was Declan Hayes, the man featured in Forbes 30 Under 30, the ruthless businessman, who had no friends, only enemies disguised as business partners. And me? I was the guy with a community college dropout label who counted pennies to make rent every month. Tomorrow evening you're coming to my family dinner, he said, his tone shifting back to ice cold as if the moment before never happened. Wear something appropriate. I'll have a suit sent to your apartment. I could only nod because my voice had vanished somewhere between confusion and fear. When he climbed into his black Mercedes and drove off, I stood there in the empty parking lot feeling like I'd just signed a contract with the devil. This arrangement would help me pay rent and chip away at my suffocating student loans. But could I really protect my heart from this dangerous game? Because the way he looked at me just now, the possessiveness radiating from his touch, that didn't feel like acting at all. The worst part? I liked it when he touched me that way. I liked feeling owned by someone for once in my invisible life. Back in my cramped studio apartment, I stared at the ceiling and replayed every interaction from tonight. The gala had been overwhelming. Declan introduced me to investors, politicians, people whose net worth could buy my entire neighborhood. His hand never left my lower back, guiding me through conversations I barely understood. When a drunk businessman made a crude comment about my appearance, Declan's entire demeanor shifted. He held between us, his body language screaming danger, and said something so quietly threatening that the man turned pale and walked away. That wasn't in our contract. That wasn't necessary for the charade. You okay? Declan had asked afterward, his thumb brushing my cheekbone in what felt like genuine concern. I'd nodded, too shocked to form words. And that's when he smiled. Actually smiled. It transformed his entire face from cold corporate machine to something almost human. Almost beautiful. My stomach had done this ridiculous flip that I blamed on the champagne, but deep down I knew better. Now lying in my bed that was probably older than my failed college career, I wondered what I'd gotten myself into. The contract was simple on paper. Attend events together, maintain the illusion of a relationship, don't catch feelings, 6 months and then freedom, plus a promotion that would change my financial situation completely. But nothing about tonight felt simple. Nothing about the way Declan held me felt contractual. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Sleep well, Riley. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. How did he get my personal number? I'd only given him my work contact. But then again, Declan Hayes probably had access to everything about me, every embarrassing detail of my mediocre existence. The thought should have scared me. Instead, it sent a warm shiver down my spine that I absolutely refused to analyze. I typed back, "Don't you have better things to do than text your fake boyfriend at midnight?" His response came immediately, "You'd be surprised what keeps me up at night lately." I stared at those words for a solid 10 minutes, my heart doing gymnastics in my chest. This was dangerous territory. This was exactly what I shouldn't be doing. But my fingers moved anyway. "Good night, Declan. Sweet dreams, Riley." I definitely didn't sleep well. I kept replaying the parking lot scene, the intensity in his eyes, the way his voice dropped when he said my name, the way his grip on my wrist felt less like restraint and more like an anchor, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. Morning came too quickly. The suit arrived at 7 a.m., delivered by a courier who looked apologetic about the early hour. Inside the garment bag was a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Perfectly tailored, as if Declan knew my exact measurements, which he probably did because apparently the man was thorough about everything. A note was pinned inside. "This color brings out your eyes. See you at 6 p.m. Don't be late." My hands trembled as I hung the suit carefully in my closet. This was really happening. Tonight I'd meet his family, sit at their dinner table, pretend to be in love with a man who made my pulse race and my common sense evaporate. A man who looked at me sometimes like I was the only person in his carefully controlled world, and other times like I was a chess piece in a game I didn't understand. I spent the entire day at the office pretending to work while actually spiraling into anxiety. My coworker Jessica noticed and asked if I was okay. I lied and said I had a headache. She offered me Tylenol in sympathy, neither of which could help with what was really wrong with me. At 5:30 I changed in the office bathroom, struggling with the tie until I got it somewhat acceptable. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The suit transformed me from invisible assistant to someone who might actually belong in Declan's world. Almost. My phone buzzed. "I'm outside. Time to step into the fire and hope I didn't get burned." My boyfriend gets shy around new people. Declan's words pulled me back from my spiraling thoughts. We were sitting in his family's mansion, a place so enormous it had an actual chandelier-lit dining room that looked like something from a period drama. His parents sat across from us, their expressions carefully neutral but their eyes judgmental. His younger sister Claire occupied the chair at the end, and she wasn't even trying to hide her contempt. From the moment we'd walked through the door, she'd looked at me like I was something unpleasant she'd stepped in. "So Riley," his mother began, her smile sharp as a blade disguised as politeness, "what exactly do you do for a living?" Before I could open my mouth to deliver the rehearsed answer about being in business development, Declan spoke up. "Riley manages critical operations for Hayes Industries. He restructured our entire filing system last year, which improved our efficiency by 30%. The board was impressed." That was a generous exaggeration of my actual job description, which mostly involved organizing documents and scheduling meetings that important people forgot about. But the way Declan said it, with such absolute conviction, almost made me believe I was actually valuable. "How convenient," Claire interjected, twirling her wineglass with practiced ease. "An employee dating the boss. I'm sure there's no conflict of interest there, Claire," Declan's father warned, but his tone was half-hearted at best. Dinner progressed like walking through a minefield. Every question felt designed to expose me as a fraud, to prove I didn't belong in their world of old money and inherited power. Claire kept making subtle digs about my background. When I mentioned I hadn't finished college, she actually laughed. "So you're a dropout who somehow caught my brother's attention? Fascinating." My face burned with embarrassment, but before I could respond, Declan's hand found mine under the table. His fingers threaded through mine, the touch gentle yet deliberate, and my breath caught in my throat. This wasn't necessary. Nobody could see what was happening beneath the white linen tablecloth. This was just for us, which meant it was either method acting taken to an extreme, or something else entirely. "Riley chose practical experience over theoretical education," Declan said, his voice carrying an edge I'd never heard before. "Unlike some people who coast on family connections, he actually earned his position." The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Claire's face flushed red, and even their mother looked taken aback by Declan's defense of me. His thumb started drawing small circles on my palm, a gesture so intimate and unconscious that my heart felt like it might explode. After dessert was served, Claire dropped another bomb with her sweetest smile. "You two should stay the night. We have a guest room prepared. It would be lovely to have breakfast together tomorrow and get to know Riley better." The challenge in her eyes was clear. She wanted to see how far we'd take this act. Declan's hand tightened around mine under the table. "We'd love to stay," he said smoothly, though I could feel the tension radiating from him. An hour later, I found myself in the guest room, staring at the single king-sized bed and fighting the urge to hyperventilate. This was fine. We were adults. We could share a bed for one night without making it weird. Except everything about this situation was already weird and getting weirder by the minute. I escaped to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, giving myself a stern talk about maintaining boundaries and not reading into things that weren't there. When I emerged, Declan was sitting on the edge of the bed, removing his tie with slow, measured movement. His suit jacket was draped over a chair and the top 2 buttons of his shirt were undone, revealing his collarbone. "The floor won't be comfortable," he said without looking at me. "The bed is large enough for both of us to maintain appropriate distance." "Declan, I know what the rules are, Riley." Finally, his eyes met mine, and something in their depths made my stomach flip. "But just for tonight, can we pretend we're not following a script? Can we just be 2 people who don't have to perform for anyone?" That single word, please, coming from a man who never asked for anything, absolutely destroyed my defenses. We lay down on opposite sides of the bed, a grand canyon of space between us. I faced the wall, hyper-aware of every sound, his breathing, the rustle of sheets when he moved, the ticking of an antique clock somewhere in the darkness. Sleep felt impossible. "Thank you for defending me tonight," I whispered into the darkness. There was a long pause before he responded. "Claire was out of line. She doesn't know anything about you. Neither do you, really. We've worked together for 2 years, but we've never actually talked about real things." Another pause, longer this time. "I know you take your coffee with too much sugar and no cream. I know you bite your pen when you're concentrating. I know you stay late on Fridays to finish everyone else's work before the weekend. I know you volunteer at the community center on Saturday mornings teaching resume skills to people who remind you of yourself." Should I continue? My heart stopped. "How do you know about the community center?" "I pay attention to things that matter." I rolled over to face his back. "Why did you really choose me for this arrangement?" There must have been other options. His shoulders tensed. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke so quietly I almost missed it. "Because when I'm around you, I don't feel like I'm suffocating. You don't want anything from me except basic human decency, which is apparently rare in my world. You're real, Riley. Everything else in my life is a transaction. But you never tried to use me or impress me. You just existed. And somehow that was enough to make me want to know what it felt like to be near someone genuine." Tears pricked my eyes. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." He laughed, the sound bitter. "Welcome to my life." I wanted to say something meaningful, something that would ease whatever pain he carried around like armor, but sleep pulled me under before I could find the words. When I woke up sometime in the pre-dawn darkness, I discovered we'd both migrated toward the center of the bed during the night. Declan's arm was draped over my waist, his breath warm against the back of my neck, and my hand was resting on top of his. We fit together like puzzle pieces, and the scariest part was how natural it felt. I should have moved. I should have put distance between us. Instead, I closed my eyes and let myself have this one stolen moment before reality crashed back in. Morning light filtered through expensive curtains, and I woke up still wrapped in Declan's arms. My first coherent thought was panic. How did we end up tangled together like this? I distinctly remembered falling asleep on my side of the bed with at least 3 feet of space between us. Now his chest was pressed against my back, his arm locked around my waist with possessive firmness, and I could feel his steady heartbeat against my shoulder blade. This was dangerous. This was exactly what the contract warned against. I tried to shift away carefully, but his arm tightened, pulling me closer. "Don't move yet," he murmured, voice rough with sleep and something deeper. "Declan, you need to wake up." "I am awake." His words were quiet, deliberate. "I've been awake for the past 20 minutes. That admission sent electricity through my entire body. He'd been holding me consciously, not accidentally. He'd chosen to keep me here in his arms when he could have rolled away, could have pretended this never happened. The implications made my head spin and my heart race so fast I thought he must feel it. "We should get up," I managed to say, though my voice came out shakier than intended. "Your family will expect us for breakfast. They can wait." But after another loaded moment, he finally released me, and we both sat up, carefully avoiding eye contact. The air between us felt charged with everything we weren't saying. Breakfast was awkward, filled with Claire's pointed observations and his mother's thinly veiled interrogation about our future plans. Declan handled it with his usual cool efficiency, but I noticed his hand kept finding reasons to touch me, adjusting my collar, brushing a non-existent piece of lint from my shoulder, refilling my coffee cup. Small gestures that screamed intimacy to anyone paying attention. The drive back to the city was silent. I stared out the window, watching the mansion disappear in the distance, trying to process everything that had happened in less than 24 hours. When Declan finally dropped me at my apartment, he caught my wrist before I could exit the car. "See you Monday," was all he said, but his eyes told a different story entirely. Monday arrived with the weight of unspoken tension. I walked into Hayes Industries expecting things to return to normal, to our professional distance and carefully maintained boundaries. Instead, everything felt shifted somehow, like we'd crossed an invisible line and couldn't find our way back. "Riley, lunch with me today," Declan said when he passed my desk mid-morning. Not a question, a statement of fact. "You have a meeting scheduled with the board at 1. Reschedule it." I blinked at him. "You never reschedule board meetings." First time for everything. He walked away before I could argue, leaving me staring at his retreating back in confusion. Lunch turned into a pattern. Every day that week, Declan found reasons to pull me away from my desk. Coffee runs that he insisted on joining. Document reviews that happened in his office with the door closed. Thursday evening, he asked me to stay late to help with a presentation, but we barely looked at the slides. Instead, we talked about everything except work. Favorite movies, childhood memories, dreams we'd given up on. "I wanted to be an architect," I admitted, surprising myself with the honesty. "Before I dropped out, I was studying design. But money ran out and reality hit hard." "Why architecture?" "I liked the idea of creating spaces where people could feel safe, where they could build lives and memories." I laughed self-consciously. Sounds stupid now. It sounds beautiful. The way he looked at me when he said it made my chest ache. Friday night, everything came to a head. The office had mostly cleared out by 7, and I was gathering my things when Declan appeared at my cubicle. "Let me drive you home." "I can take the bus." "Riley." Just my name, but loaded with meaning I couldn't quite interpret. We ended up in the underground parking garage, that concrete tomb where fluorescent lights hummed overhead and our footsteps echoed off bare walls. No cameras down here, no witnesses, just us and the truth we'd been dancing around all week. "We need to talk about what's happening," I said, forcing myself to confront what we'd both been avoiding. "What do you think is happening?" He stopped walking, turning to face me fully. "I don't know. That's the problem. We're supposed to be pretending, but nothing about this week felt like pretending." Declan stepped closer, backing me up until I hit the concrete wall. His hands came up to rest on either side of my head, caging me in but not touching, giving me space to escape if I wanted. "I didn't want to." "You're right," he said, voice dropping lower. "I stopped pretending weeks ago. Maybe I never was pretending in the first place." "Don't say things like that." My protest came out breathless, unconvincing even to my own ears. "Why not?" "Because it complicates our arrangement? Because it makes this messy and real instead of neat and contractual?" He leaned in closer, his breath ghosting across my lips. "I've spent 4 weeks trying to convince myself this was still business, that the reason I wanted you at every meeting, every dinner, every moment of my day, was because we had to maintain appearances. But there were no cameras in my family's guest room, Riley. There was no audience when I held you while you slept. That was just me being selfish, wanting something I shouldn't want." "Declan, let me finish." His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my knees weak. "I don't do relationships. I don't do feelings. I built my entire life around control and distance because it was safer than letting anyone close enough to hurt me. Then you walked into my office 2 years ago, spilled coffee all over my favorite tie, and apologized so profusely I almost laughed. Almost. And I've been fighting this ever since." My hands came up to grip his shirt, whether to push him away or pull him closer I couldn't decide. "This isn't part of our deal. Forget the deal." His forehead dropped to rest against mine. "Tell me you don't feel this too. Tell me I'm imagining the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. Tell me your heart isn't racing right now the same way mine is." I couldn't tell him any of those things because they'd all be lies. If I kiss you right now, he whispered, his lips barely an inch from mine, will you push me away? Every logical part of my brain screamed that this was a mistake, that mixing business with feelings would end in disaster, that I was setting myself up for heartbreak. But my heart had never been logical. Only one way to find out, I whispered back. The distance between us disappeared. Declan didn't kiss me that night in the parking garage. He stopped at the last possible second, his forehead pressed against mine, and whispered words that haunted me for days after. Not like this. Not when your head is spinning and you can't think straight. Then he walked away, leaving me alone against that cold concrete wall, feeling frustrated and confused and strangely disappointed in a way that terrified me. The following week became its own special kind of torture. At the office, we maintained our professional facades, but the air between us crackled with unspoken tension. Every accidental brush of hands when passing documents, every moment our eyes met across the conference room, every time I caught him staring at me when he thought I wasn't looking. It all served as a constant reminder that something fundamental had shifted between us. I didn't know if that shift was dangerous or inevitable or both. Then Thursday arrived and dropped a bomb that shattered whatever fragile equilibrium we'd maintained. Declan's ex-fiancée just walked into the building. The receptionist whispered to me with barely contained excitement, her eyes gleaming with the promise of fresh gossip. She's heading up to the executive floor right now. Conference room meeting scheduled. Vanessa Whitmore. The entire reason this fake relationship charade had started in the first place. My stomach twisted into knots as reality crashed down on me. This whole arrangement had been about making her jealous, about corporate strategy and business leverage. I was just a tool in someone else's game, wasn't I? I found myself walking past the conference room an hour later, telling myself I was just heading to the copy room, definitely not trying to eavesdrop. But voices carried through the partially open door, and I couldn't help but hear, so who exactly is this Riley person? Vanessa's voice cut through the air like a sharpened knife. Your assistant? Really, Declan? Is this your idea of a rebound or just a publicity stunt to make me regret my decisions? What I do with my personal life stopped being your concern the day you chose corporate advancement over our engagement. Declan's response was cold, measured, perfectly controlled. My decisions affect our family's business partnership, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. There was a pause, and I could practically hear her calculating smile. Unless this whole thing is just theater, did you actually hire some random employee to parade around as your boyfriend just to get under my skin? 'Cause darling, it's really not working. My chest constricted painfully, so everyone could see through us. The whole office probably knew this was fake, and I'd been walking around like an idiot thinking maybe, just maybe, some part of it had become real. I practically ran back to my cubicle, my hands shaking as I started shoving my belongings into my bag. This was beyond stupid. I'd actually started believing that Declan might feel something genuine for me, that those touches and glances meant more than just good acting. God, how naive could one person be? Riley. I turned to find Declan standing in my cubicle entrance, his expression strained in a way I'd never seen before. His tie was slightly loosened. His hair looked like he'd run his hands through it multiple times, and there was something almost desperate in his eyes. Whatever Vanessa said was the truth. I cut him off, forcing my voice to stay steady even as my world crumbled. This is fake. I know that. I've always known that. The contract was for 6 months and we're almost done anyway. I think we should just end this now before it gets any more complicated. No. What do you mean no? I felt anger rising to replace the hurt. Your ex is back. Your mission is accomplished. You've proven whatever point you were trying to make. I don't give a damn about Vanessa. For the first time since I'd known him, Declan raised his voice and several heads popped up from nearby cubicles. He stepped into my space, lowering his voice but losing none of its intensity. What I need, what I want. I can't even put it into words properly, Riley. But whatever this started as, it stopped being fake for me weeks ago. I laughed, but it came out bitter and broken. So what is this then? Some kind of revelation? You expect me to believe that you've suddenly developed feelings? You, who keeps everyone at arm's length, who treats emotions like a business liability, who barely speaks to your own family without maintaining perfect control, you're telling me you've somehow fallen for your assistant. He grabbed both my shoulders, and the intensity in his eyes actually made me take a step back. You make me feel human again, Riley. When I'm with you, I can be the person I want to be instead of the machine everyone expects. Your smile is the first thing I look forward to every morning. That annoying habit you have of biting your pen when you're concentrating, I find it endearing. I memorized your coffee order 2 years ago. I know you volunteer at the homeless shelter every other weekend. I know you send money to your younger sister even though you can barely afford your own rent. I know everything about you because I've been paying attention since the day you walked into my office and apologized 17 times for spilling coffee on my suit. Tears burned in my eyes and I hated myself for it. This doesn't make sense. This can't be real. Then why are you crying? His voice softened and his thumbs brushed across my cheekbones, catching tears I didn't realize had fallen. Why does the thought of ending this hurt you if you don't feel anything? I couldn't answer. I couldn't breathe. Because he was right, and that terrified me more than anything else. I'm not asking you to trust me completely right now, Declan continued, his voice dropping to something raw and honest. I'm not even asking you to believe me. I'm just asking you not walk away yet. Give me a chance to prove this is real. Please, that word, please, from a man who never asked for anything, who commanded and expected obedience, completely undid me. I need time, I whispered, my voice cracking. I need to think. Take all the time you need. He pressed his forehead to mine and I could feel him trembling slightly. Just don't disappear. Don't shut me out completely. I nodded, unable to form words, and he finally released me. As he walked away, I sank into my desk chair, my entire body shaking. Everything I thought I understood about this arrangement, about Declan, about my own carefully guarded feelings, it had all been turned upside down in the span of one devastating conversation. And the scariest part? Some desperate, hopeful part of me wanted to believe every word he'd said. I spent the next week avoiding Declan like my life depended on it. Professional emails only. No personal interaction. Zero eye contact. When he emerged from his office, I suddenly discovered urgent business in the supply closet. When he requested my presence at meetings, I sent apologetic declines, citing conflicting schedules that were complete fabrications. Was it immature? Absolutely. But I was terrified. Because if I admitted my feelings out loud, if I acknowledged this thing between us, and it turned out to be temporary or misguided or just wishful thinking on both our parts, the resulting heartbreak would destroy me completely. Friday evening brought the quarterly office party, a mandatory social event designed to impress potential investors. I could have skipped it, but HR had specifically requested my attendance. I wore a simple navy blazer over a white shirt, positioned myself in the corner near the emergency exit, and prayed Declan would be too busy networking to notice me. But of course he noticed. He always noticed. Running away from me isn't gonna change what's happening between us, he said, appearing beside me with a whiskey glass in hand, looking unfairly attractive in his charcoal suits. I'm not running. I'm processing. I kept my eyes fixed on the crowd, refusing to look at him directly. Processing what, exactly? This entire mess. This situation that got completely out of control. You got what you wanted, your family stopped pressuring you, Vanessa got the message loud and clear. The contract is essentially fulfilled. We can walk away clean. Just then, someone approached us. Tyler Morrison from the finance department, carrying 2 drinks and wearing an easy smile. Hey Riley, want something to drink? You look like you could use it. I nodded gratefully and followed him to the bar, very deliberately not looking back at Declan. Tyler was nice, uncomplicated, funny in an effortless way that required no emotional risk. We started talking about harmless topics, upcoming projects, terrible office coffee, a documentary about financial scandals we'd both watched. For the first time in a week, I felt like I could breathe normally. Then I felt it. That burning sensation when someone's staring at you with such intensity you can physically feel their gaze. I glanced across the room. Declan stood near the opposite wall, completely ignoring the investor trying to engage him in conversation. His eyes were locked on me with an expression I'd never seen before. Possessive, angry, and unmistakably jealous. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping even from this distance. Tyler touched my arm while making a joke about expense reports, a casual gesture that meant nothing. Within seconds, Declan materialized beside us like he'd teleported. Riley, We need to talk. Right now. His voice was dangerously quiet. Every word clipped. I'm actually in the middle of a conversation. That wasn't a request. Tyler looked between us, clearly sensing the tension, and made a hasty excuse about needing to speak with someone across the room. Declan's hand closed around my wrist. Not painful but absolutely unyielding, and he practically dragged me through the crowd, out the door and up the emergency stairs to the rooftop. The night air hit us like a slap, cold and sharp. City lights sprawled below us, and we were completely alone in the darkness. What the hell was that? Declan demanded, releasing my wrist but stepping close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. A conversation? People have them at parties. It's a normal social interaction. Don't play innocent with me, Riley. He moved closer, backing me up until I hit the rooftop railing. You were flirting with him. And what if I was? We're not actually together, remember? This whole thing has been pretend from the start. Pretend? Something in his carefully constructed control snapped. I've been trying to show you how real this is for me for weeks now, and you keep throwing the word pretend in my face like it means something. Like it still applies to us. Then say it clearly. My voice cracked, all my pent-up frustration and confusion pouring out. Stop dancing around it with vague implications and meaningful looks. If you want something from me, if you feel something, then actually say the words. Fine. He grabbed my face with both hands, his eyes blazing. I've fallen completely, catastrophically in love with you, you infuriating, oblivious man. I've probably been in love with you since the beginning, since before I had the courage to admit it even to myself. That's why I created this ridiculous fake relationship scheme, not primarily to make Vanessa jealous, but because I was too much of a coward to simply ask you out like a normal person. I thought if I could just have you close even under false pretenses, it would be enough. But it's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. The world stopped spinning. Time suspended itself. All I could hear was my heartbeat thundering in my ears and the echo of his confession hanging in the air between us. And just now, he continued, his voice dropping to something raw and vulnerable, watching you with him, seeing him touch you and make you laugh, knowing he could potentially offer you something simple and uncomplicated while I can only offer you this complicated mess. It's killing me, Riley. You've become essential. You're not a contract or an arrangement or a convenient prop. You're everything I didn't know I needed, and the thought of losing you to someone else is unbearable. I'm not your possession, I managed to whisper, but my conviction wavered. Then choose to be mine anyway. His thumbs traced my cheekbones. His touch impossibly gentle despite the intensity of his words. Not because of a contract or obligation. Choose me because you want to. This thing between us is real and terrifying and worth the risk. No more pretending. No more games. Just us. Figuring this out together. My hands came up to grip his wrists, where they framed my face. What if you change your mind? What if this is just intensity and proximity and it fades when the novelty wears off? Then I'll spend every single day for the rest of my life, proving that it won't. That what I feel for you isn't temporary or convenient or circumstantial. That you're not replaceable or forgettable or just another item on my agenda. His forehead dropped against mine. Let me prove it, Riley. Please. Just give me that chance. And finally, with my heart hammering and my hands shaking and every logical thought screaming that this was reckless, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. Kissing Declan wasn't anything like the sanitized versions shown in romantic movies. It was messy and desperate, and perfect in its imperfection. His hands tangled in my hair while mine gripped his shirt hard enough to wrinkle the expensive fabric, and we poured every unsaid word and suppressed feeling into the contact. When we finally broke apart, both breathless and slightly dizzy, he pressed his forehead to mine and did something I'd only seen once before. He laughed. Actually laughed. Genuine and unguarded and completely transformative. Tell me this is real, I whispered, needing the confirmation even though every nerve ending in my body already knew the answer. This is the most real thing that's ever happened to me. His voice was rough, honest, stripped of all pretense. Everything else in my life has been performance and calculation. This? Us. This is the first time I felt truly alive in years. The next morning, walking into Hayes Industries felt surreal. I barely slept, too wired from everything that had happened on that rooftop. From the way Declan had held me after that kiss like he was afraid I'd vanish if he let go. We talked for hours up there. About fears and hopes and what trying this for real might actually look like. At 10 a.m. Declan called an emergency meeting with the executive team and HR. I assumed it was about some business crisis until I was specifically requested to attend. Standing in that conference room full of senior leadership, my heart pounding with anxiety, I watched Declan address the room with his usual commanding presence. I'm making an official disclosure regarding my relationship with Riley Chen. We're together genuinely and seriously. If anyone has concerns about conflicts of interest or ethical considerations, I encourage you to schedule time with HR to discuss appropriate protocols. This is not up for debate or speculation. This is simply a professional courtesy to ensure transparency. The gossip explosion was immediate and predictable. Curious stares followed us through the hallways. Whispered conversations paused when we walked by. But for once in my life, I didn't care what other people thought. Because during lunch break when Declan took my hand openly in the cafeteria, no cameras, no performance, just because he wanted to, I realized that this was worth every awkward conversation and judgmental look. A week later, Claire invited me for coffee. I expected more hostility, more accusations about my motives. Instead, she studied me for a long moment before speaking. I've never seen Declan like this. He's always been so controlled, so closed off, even with family. But around you, he's different. More human. More like the brother I remember from before our father started grooming him to be a corporate machine. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Thank you for giving him that. For helping him remember he's allowed to be more than just his position. Vanessa left the city entirely, selling her company shares and accepting a position overseas. I felt relief more than victory when I heard the news. That chapter of Declan's life was finally closed, and we could move forward without that particular shadow hanging over us. But the best moment came 2 weeks after our rooftop confession. Declan invited me to his penthouse, not for appearances or strategy, but simply for dinner. Just us, no performance required. I arrived to find him in his kitchen, actually attempting to cook. He'd traded his usual sharp suit for jeans and a casual shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and he looked both completely out of his element and absolutely endearing. I should warn you, he said, looking slightly embarrassed as he stirred something on the stove. My cooking skills are extremely limited. This pasta might be slightly burnt, or significantly burnt. The jury's still out. The effort counts for everything. I moved behind him, wrapping my arms around his waist and resting my chin on his shoulder. The casual intimacy of the gesture still felt new and slightly miraculous. We ended up eating on the floor of his living room because the dining table felt too formal, too much like the performances we'd left behind. The pasta was indeed slightly burnt, but I wouldn't have changed a single thing about that evening. I was terrified, I admitted as we sat surrounded by empty plates and wine glasses. When this arrangement started, I was scared that when it ended you'd just forget I existed. That I'd go back to being invisible. Declan set down his glass and turned to face me fully. His expression serious. You were never invisible to me, Riley. Not from the beginning. You just didn't know I was looking. That's pretty intense, you realize. Borderline stalker territory. I prefer the term extremely observant and romantically invested. He pulled me closer and I went willingly, settling against his chest. And for the record, you're stuck with me now. This isn't a temporary arrangement with an expiration date. This is me, choosing you every single day, for as long as you'll have me. Forever is a long time, I said softly, testing the weight of the word. Then let's start with tonight. He tilted my chin up and kissed me, slow and thorough and perfect. And tomorrow night, and the night after that, we'll build forever one day at a time. Without contracts or arrangements or any pretense at all. Just you and me, figuring out what it means to be real together. I kissed him back, pouring every ounce of feeling I had into the contact. Somewhere between his whispered promises and the way he held me like I was precious, I realized something profound. This fake relationship had given me the most genuine love I'd ever experienced. It was complicated and messy and sometimes terrifying, but it was completely perfectly ours. I love you, I whispered against his lips, saying it out loud for the first time. I'm absolutely in love with you, and it scares me how much I mean it. Good. His smile was brilliant, unguarded, Everything I'd spent weeks trying to coax out of him. Because I planned to spend considerable time making sure you never regret taking this chance on me. And as we sat there on the floor of his penthouse, tangled together with the city lights glowing through the windows, I knew with absolute certainty that I wouldn't regret a single moment. This messy, complicated, beautifully real love was worth every risk. No more pretending. No more walls. Just us and the future we'd build together, one genuine moment at a time.